They lost their shit. You set one boundary, one reasonable boundary, and they completely lost their shit. The manipulation ramped up. The guilt trips got more elaborate. They even recruited other family members to tell you how you are destroying everything. And somehow, you became the villain in this whole story. If that's what you're experiencing right now, you're not doing it wrong. You're not being too harsh. You're not overreacting. You're not rude or disrespectful. You're witnessing something called an extinction burst. And nobody fucking warned you it would get this bad before it gets better. Welcome to Rage Against the Audacity. This is your space where that chaos you're experiencing finally makes sense. Today, we're talking about extinction bursts, what they are, why dysfunction escalates when you stop rewarding behavior, and the fallout from the Oprah podcast episode on family estrangement. Before we dive in, if this resonates with what you're experiencing, please hit subscribe and hit like. It helps other people find this community when they need it the most. And trust me, right now with everything that's going on in the world, we need it. Now let me explain what's happening. So, let's talk about what an extinction burst is. Because once you understand this, so much about your life and what you're experiencing lately is going to make sense. In behavioral psychology, an extinction burst occurs when a behavior that was previously rewarded stops getting that reward. And instead of that behavior fading away, it intensifies, temporarily becoming more frequent, more intense, more desperate. Think about a vending machine. I'm going to use a vending machine as an example here. Go with me on this. I think it works. So you're at a vending machine. You're really hungry. You need that Snickers. You put in $1 and you press the button. Nothing happens. What do? You don't just walk away, right? You press the button again, and you might press the button again. Then you may press it again and you press it harder. Then we have the whole, let me press it in rapid succession. Maybe you hit the machine a little bit, and then maybe you try to shake it a little bit as well. That is an extinction burst. It's the escalation before you finally accept that the machine is broken. Except, of course, we're not talking about vending machines here. We're talking about people who've been conditioned to expect your attention, emotional labor, accommodation, and even endless patience. And when you finally stop providing it, they don't accept it gracefully. They escalate. Here's what this looks like in real life. I'm going to give you a few scenarios. First scenario. The family member who could always guilt trip you into doing what they wanted suddenly can't. So they don't just accept it. They ramp up the guilt tripping. They may add in some threats, call you all out your name, maybe bring some flying monkeys in to pressure you. The intensity increases because the old strategy doesn't work anymore. Another situation might be a friend who has always monopolized every conversation. We talked about this in the previous episode, conversational selfie culture. When you stop being their captive audience, they don't just find someone else to talk to. They send you paragraphs of text. They might start showing up unannounced. And cue the wicked witch's flying monkeys, because they'll start calling your friends to either feign concern or to complain about how you've changed and that you're being distant all of a sudden. That's triangulation, bringing in third parties to create pressure to make you the problem. They're escalating by recruiting an audience to validate their version of reality and corner you back into your old role. Another situation may be the parent who controlled you through their emotional reactivity. When you stop managing their feelings, they suddenly don't become emotionally mature. They have meltdowns that will make a toddler look reasonable. And if you know, you know. This is the part that nobody warns you about when you start setting boundaries. Every book, therapist, well-meaning friend tells you just set clear boundaries and stick to them. What they don't tell you is it's going to get worse after you set those boundaries before it gets better. And sometimes it's going to get much worse. Because what you're triggering isn't a communication problem that can be fixed with better words. You're triggering a psychological phenomenon where dysfunction fights like hell to keep getting what it wants. For this episode's Audacity files, let me tell you about what happened when Oprah decided to talk about family estrangement. She released a podcast in November of 2025 about the rising trend of adult children going no contact with family members. And she opened with a statistic that explains so much about the world we're living in right now. 1/3 of Americans are currently estranged from a family member. 1/3. And the response to this episode, the rage it triggered, is a perfect example of what we're talking about today. Because we aren't witnessing just a conversation about family dynamics. We're witnessing a massive collective extinction burst in family structures because they are losing something they thought they were entitled to forever. For the first time in history, adult children have a language for what they've experienced growing up. They have access to therapy, online communities, frameworks for understanding that family dysfunction and things like emotional neglect are real harm. They can finally name what happened to them. And they're using that awareness to set boundaries with parents who were emotionally unavailable, controlling, manipulative, or maybe even physically or emotionally abusive. Sometimes that boundary is reducing contact. Sometimes it's no contact at all. And the parents, they're having an extinction burst over it. Because the reward they expected, the automatic access to their adult children and maybe grandchildren, unconditional loyalty regardless of their behavior, their kids showing up and playing those assigned roles in the family system, that reward is gone. And instead of self-reflection, instead of maybe I should understand why my adult child made that choice, what do we see? Escalation in the form of tantrums. The manipulation intensifies. You're going to hear tantrums' greatest hits, like, after everything I've done for you, I sacrificed so much. How can you be so ungrateful? This was my favorite. You don't show any respect. The guilt shaming ramps up. You're destroying this family. Your grandmother is heartbroken. She's going to be sick to death over this. I'll never forgive you for this. Your sister would never do this. Why can't you be like her? You only get one mom and one dad. The triangulation goes into overdrive, and other family members are riled up to pressure the adult child. They'll say things like, your brother and sister think you're being unreasonable. Everyone's worried about you. They're all flying monkeys deployed to make the adult child who set the boundaries the problem. And here's the wildest part. Many of these parents genuinely claim that they don't know why their adult children won't talk to them. I'm going to step in here and just keep it 100. I don't believe that under most circumstances, adults, children didn't try to tell their parents So I don't believe these parents weren't told. I don't believe a lot of them. I'm going to be completely 100 on this. I just genuinely don't believe it. Do I believe they didn't hear? Absolutely. I believe they didn't hear it. I don't believe they weren't told. Listening would require self-reflection and putting yourself in someone else's shoes. And self-reflection might mean acknowledging, maybe I did cause harm here. So instead, we get defensiveness, denial, tantrums that would make a toddler look emotionally mature. We did the best we could. You might hear that. Which, for all intent and purposes, is probably true. But here's the audacity of it all. These parents want their adult children to give to them something that they never provided. They want closeness they never built. They want empathy they never showed. They want compassion and understanding they never offered. They want emotional intimacy from their adult children they raised with emotional neglect. And when their adult children say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. When they hold the line on their boundaries, the parents escalate. They throw tantrums. They deploy every manipulation tactic in the book. And they center their own pain while completely ignoring why their children made this choice in the first place. That's the extinction burst. The Oprah episode triggered such intense backlash because it threatened to normalize something that terrifies these parents. The idea that adult children don't owe them anything. That, but I'm your parent, isn't a magic phrase that erases decades of hurt and harm. That providing food and shelter doesn't automatically entitle you to emotional access. That maybe if your adult child won't speak to you, you might be the common denominator. And that possibility, that loss of control and access, for parents who built an entire identity around the assumption that their children would always show up, always accommodate, always play their roles, that's gotta feel like death. So, they're fighting like hell to get that reward back. Here's what makes this moment so significant. This extinction burst is changing how adult children and parents will relate to one another for generations to come, because adult children are holding the line. Despite the manipulation and the guilt, despite the flying monkeys, public shaming and the accusations, name callings and tantrums, all the things, the adult children are holding firm. And research tells us that if you hold firm through an extinction burst, if you don't reward the escalation, the behavior will eventually stop. Just like a toddler demanding candy at the register. It has to. Because the old strategy doesn't work anymore. What we're witnessing right now is an entire generation of parents learning, often for the first time in their lives, that they can't manipulate, guilt, or tantrum their way back into their adult children's lives in a way where everything goes back to the way it was. That if they want a relationship, they're going to have to do something they never had to do before. Earn it. Through accountability, through change, through actual emotional work, which will actually benefit everybody and even them in the long run. And for many of them, that feels impossible. So they double down on the whole extinction burst, hoping that if they just escalate hard enough, long enough, their kids will cave. But more and more adult children aren't caving. They're staying behind the fourth wall, observing the tantrum without absorbing it. Recognizing it for what it is, a predictable psychological response to losing guaranteed access and control. And that shift, that's going to reshape family dynamics for everyone who comes after us. So that's what we're dealing with, folks. That's what we're dealing with. A massive shift in how families operate. A generation of adult children holding boundaries that parents never thought they'd have to respect. And the extinction burst that comes with losing all that good stuff, the access and the control. But here's what I haven't told you yet. This exhaustion that you're feeling right now, this sense that the world has gone completely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, batshit insane. There's a reason it feels like it's too much. You're not just managing one extinction burst. You're navigating a world where they're happening everywhere, all at once. In your family, in your workplace, in your friend relationships and acquaintances, and even in the broader culture and society around you. Multiple overlapping tantrums from people who are losing the rewards they thought they were entitled to forever. We're at a tipping point that has been growing and growing for, I would say, probably the last couple of decades. And nobody prepared you for this. Honestly, I don't think anything could have prepared us for this. All right, guys, this episode was a long one. It's being broken into 2 parts. We're finishing part 1 now. But in the next episode, we're going to be diving into why this moment is so uniquely overwhelming, how to recognize the difference between legitimate grief and manipulative escalation. And most importantly, we're going to be talking about how to survive when everyone is telling you the explosion is your fault. Because here's what pisses me off the most. They see the meltdown and assume that's where it started. But you and I both know about the erased backstory. The decades that came before this moment. So if you're in the middle of an extinction burst right now, part 2 is where we validate every exhausting year that led up to the explosion. Where we give you the tools to hold firm. And where we give you permission to stop apologizing for wanting reciprocity in healthy relationships. Until then, remember, the extinction burst is temporary. Your boundary can be permanent, and you have permission to hold the line. This is Rage Against the Audacity. Part 2 is going to drop in about a week. So please hit like, hit subscribe to get this out there to people who need it right now. Drop a comment so when they get here, they can see that they are not alone. Let's do this together.